Here is the layout of the 4.8-mile-long Dwyer Speedpark. Goliath is the extremely wide and high-banked first corner, but despite its appearance, you're at a disadvantage if you try to pass on the inside in this corner, unless you can beat your opponent down into the S's, because entering the S's, the car on the left will lose all of its momentum. In this series of corners, you are better off focusing on making your line as perfect as possible. If you take the S's poorly, you will wash up into the car next to you and take both of you off into the wall, as we saw several times during the qualifying races. Now, if you can get a good run out of the S's, then the run down through turn 6 will be a good passing zone for you, but you want to make sure you have your opponent cleared before you go into turns 7 and 8. That's been another big trouble spot during this week, and it's best if you just focus on your line instead of your opponent, like in the S's. And then after that, you come into what I consider the best passing zone of the whole track. You come off of 9 and 10 and down that long stretch into 11. You get onto the right side of your opponent, and if you can hang on through 11, you will complete the pass by the time you get into 13. In other news, Lenore Scurry was stripped of her spot in the race after getting into an accident with Ken Groves during her qualifier. She drove into the back of the 74 car and sent him for several rolls. As a result of this, Ian Cooper, who finished 21st in that qualifier, has been bumped into the field. Rene Ricarmier, who came into this race second in points, failed to qualify. However, Wiper Ildist Racing co-owner Mark Ildist bought the spot in the field occupied by Math Motors, who I heard were very quick to accept the cash. I believe this was due to Gasnier pressuring/forcing the team to find a spot for Ricarmier one way or another. Anyway, I'm running a bit long, so I'm going to hand it off to Scott for the race. Thank you, Earl. I will now go through the starting lineup for the 2011 150 laps of Dwyer. In row number 21 will be Cameron Sweetwater and Nikula Lako Blaze Jonas, who both spun on their qualifying laps. Ashley Tucker and Matthew Gray in row 20. They are both making their first ARLA Elite Series starts. Jared Anderson and Rachel Gonzalez in row number 19. Row 18 will be Scott Morales and Kyle Eckerton. Morales will have former Team Master Cup Series driver Dan Lecklider filling in for him later on in the night. Row 16 will have Ryan Griffin on the outside and Anthony Griffith on the inside. On the outside of row 15 will be Lake Ruel and Jamie Flock, and on the inside, Andy Pearson with his son Matt filling in for him. Henry Santos will be making his first ARLA Elite Series start, as will Tiffany Matthews. Tyson Lautenschlager is on the outside of row 12 with Ricky Flush on his inside. Flush's relief driver will be Master Cup Series driver Leon Keniston. Row 11 will be Amy Harrison and Gary D'Souza. Row 10, Riggs Motorsports teammates Harry Anola and Ali Riggs. Row 9, Todd Wojdarczyk and Michael Madrigal. Row number 8 will be Jason Bates and Laura Cyrus, who will be driving that 50 car for the rest of the season. Row 7, Dale Underwood and Packer Carroll with Alexis Rainsford relieving the 71 car. Kevin Monroe and Cody Richards in row 6. Row 5, Jacob Eichholz and Taylor Brillen, and relieving Brillen will be her father Kendall, who won the 1996 Rockford 200. Ian Cooper on the outside of row 3, and on the inside, Jim Kidd returns to ARLA competition. And in row 2, we have Bigsby Foot and Rene Ricarmier. And finally, on the Smash Beer front row, Marcus Leonard takes the pole with Tom Delgado on his outside. The pace car pulls off the track, leaving the field in the hands of Leonard, and the green flag is out at the 150 laps of Dwyer. Dale Underwood in the 03 almost drifts off into the grass. Leonard leads the field through Goliath as we experienced some technical difficulties there. Sorry about that. He opens the gap on the 87, and here comes Ricarmier trying to take second from Delgado. And now the field pours through the S's, one of the big trouble spots of the week. But amazingly, everybody makes it through clean. Delgado hangs on to the second spot, but he is still about 6 car lengths behind the Division by Zero car. On lap number 2, we have our first incident as Jim Kidd slides up into his teammate Bigsby Foot, taking them both off the course and into the wall. I can't imagine PSI is going to be too happy with Kidd. He showed a lot of speed during the week, but it doesn't matter when you go and wipe your teammate out on the second lap. And then coming into turn number 8, Jason Bates and Todd Wojdarczyk get together. Wojdarczyk pushes Bates right off the course. I'm not too sure who to put fault at, but I think Włodarczyk could have avoided spinning the 51 out like that. Leigh Gruel and Jared Anderson are the next victims of the S's as Gruel gets loose and slides up into Anderson, taking them both into the wall. I believe Gruel got into an incident with Blake Camphausen in the qualifiers, and his week is not getting much better. Back at the business end of the field, Tom Delgado tries to get around Marcus Leonard for the top spot. However, you are at a disadvantage when you're on the left side coming through the S's. Delgado slips back while Leonard hangs on to the lead. Henry Santos' debut suddenly turns sour as he drifts up into Gary D'Souza coming out of the S's, taking both cars into the wall. Santos and D'Souza are able to drive away, and you see D'Souza has backed up right into the middle of the racing line. Todd Włodarczyk just barely misses the 149. He just squeezes in between D'Souza and the curbing. There was no reason for D'Souza to start backing up as traffic was coming. Herbie Finkelberg has to come into the pits early in the race due to a mechanical problem. He'll remain on the lead lap, but at the same time, he will lose a lot of ground. Cameron Sweetwater has a tire go down. She will also have to come into the pits. Battle for the lead heats up once again with a little bit of interference from Bigsby Foot. He holds up Marcus Leonard, and Tom Delgado sweeps by the Division by Zero car. Bigsby Foot also plays interference with Cody Richards. Laura Cyrus is coming to make it 3 wide. Foot slides up into Richards, taking both cars into the wall. Richards was furious with Foot, and as you can see, race control wasn't too happy with Foot either. It looks really bad on your part when you wreck the leaders while you're running a lap down. Joseph Howard gets by Rene Carmier for the 3rd spot. Howard and his team owner Tom Delgado were the only MRD cars to qualify for this race, and right now they are both running inside the top 3. Speaking of Delgado, he is still being tailed by Marcus Leonard. The lapped car of Gary D'Souza certainly isn't making life easy for the 87. Leonard makes a run on the right side coming into turn 8. D'Souza drifts back over. Leonard and Delgado get together and go off the course and into the wall. The top 2 have just crashed, and they will lose several positions. Gary D'Souza has just been called to race control, and it certainly looks like that he played a part in this. Let's go on board Marcus Leonard in the Division by Zero car. It looks like D'Souza just pushed to the right a little bit, and Leonard might have sideswiped him and gets into the 87 with nowhere to go, really. But what a heartbreak for Leonard and Delgado, who swept the front row in the final 30 seconds of the pole shootout. And then Leonard would have more problems. He gets into Kyle Eckerton coming out of the S's and then sweeps across Kevin Monroe's front bumper, and your points leader goes into the wall. Oh, what is that? Officials clearly don't seem to have any sympathy for Marcus Leonard. In the meantime, Joseph Howard inherits the lead of the race, and he will kick off the first cycle of pit stops. Ian Cooper in the Infinity car will follow suit. We don't have a lot of takers on this lap. Marcus Leonard is in, and I would think it's pretty obvious that he would come in due to all that damage he has. Likewise for Tom Delgado. Michael Madrigal and Jason Bates also dive into the pits. On the next lap, most of the leaders will come in. Rene Carmier, Ricky Flush, Jacob Eichholz, Laura Cyrus, Sally Riggs, Dale Underwood, Tyson Lautenschlager, Tiffany Matthews having a good run so far. Kyle Eckerton, Matthew Gray, Rachel Rainsford, Andy Pearson, Brenda Riggs, Nikula Leko, Blaze Jonas, Henrietta Laverne, Todd Włodarczyk, and Packer Carroll. However, Packer Carroll is going to come in much too fast, and he will slam into the back of Todd Włodarczyk, his teammate. Carroll will drop out of the race, and he was promptly called to race control. Pit lane collisions are generally not taken lightly. Taylor Brillin stayed out for an extra lap in order to gain some time on the leaders, and she would be rewarded with a huge gap over the rest of the field. Ricky Flush cycled out in the 2nd spot ahead of Joseph Howard, who was the first to pit. Jacob Eichholz moved up to 4th, and in 5th you see Anthony Griffith. He pitted on the same lap as Taylor Brillin and gained a lot of spots because of it. Tom Delgado encounters even more problems. He slides into Jared Anderson, taking both cars into the wall, and Delgado does several rolls in the grass. A great start for Delgado suddenly turns sour, and now it gets even worse. Taylor Brillen eventually loses her big gap over the field. When you stay out later, that also means your tires heat up later than the cars that pitted before you. Joseph Howard pitted first, so he would eventually become the fastest car during this run, and now he is right on the back bumper of the 65, coming into the S's. The night comes to an early end for Ryan Griffin and Rachel Gonzalez as Griffin drifts up into Gonzalez, coming out of the S's, taking both cars into the wall, and Ryan Griffin will end up on his roof. Griffin has only made a few starts this season, and he has shown a lot of speed, but it was not meant to be tonight. Leigh Gruel gets in the way, but Rene Recarmier will have none of it, and he turns Gruel head on into the wall. That was not even close to being marginal. Recarmier just flat out dumped the 46. I know the officials are kind of lenient about dumping lapped cars, but you don't do it in one of the fastest parts of the track. Hot tires prevail as Joseph Howard gets by Taylor Brillen for the lead. And behind them, you see that Ricky Flush and Jacob Eichholz are starting to close in. And then, just like the first time around, Joseph Howard kicks off the second cycle of pit stops. Ricky Flush and Taylor Brillen stayed out for an extra lap, but then they became focused on fighting each other for the lead, which Ricky Flush took without too much of a problem as Brillen ran off the road a little bit. That time by, Ricky Flush and Jacob Eichholz hit the pit lane. Taylor Brillen stays out for another lap. Laura Cyrus also hits the pit lane. Tiffany Matthews, Matthew Gray is coming in, Rene Recarmier. Recarmier has actually slipped back a little bit. We believe he might have dropped a cylinder. In the middle of the pit cycle, Cameron Sweetwater is battling with Henrietta Laverne and Ashley Tucker. And now she isn't anymore as she drifts into the 49 and takes herself into the wall. Brillen finally comes into the pits on the third lap of the cycle, as well as the rest of the leaders. Dale Underwood heads into the pits. Ashley Tucker is coming around. Is she passing up the pits? She is! Ashley Tucker is going to gamble on her fuel and tires holding out for one more lap. Her crew chief has got to be screaming at her for not pitting that time around, but Tucker stands to gain a lot of time if this pays off. Tucker is only making her first ARLA start, but she's already turning heads with this incredibly risky pit strategy. And Tucker is rewarded with a spot well inside the top 15. Taylor Brillen was once again the leader when pit stops cycled out, but she was quickly hunted down and passed by Ricky Flush on his warmer tires. The top two are now getting by Kevin Monroe, who is Brillen's car owner, and Monroe is being a fairly gracious backmarker right now. Ian Cooper's engine grenades on him. Cooper was bumped into the field after Lenore Scurry was DQ'd from the qualifying race that they were both in, but Cooper's engine will not let him capitalize on that opportunity. Rene Recarmier continues to run slightly off the pace. We can confirm that he indeed dropped a cylinder on that Gasnier. As Earl explained in the pre-race show, Recarmier's inclusion in the field was not without controversy. Wiper Ildist Racing bought Recarmier the spot occupied by the Math Motors team. We believe that this was due to Gasnier pressuring the team into finding a spot for Recarmier one way or another. And now we see the battle for the lead heating up once again as Ricky Flush ran off the road exiting turn 8, opening up the door for Taylor Brillen. And coming through turn number 10, she will clear the 31. Matthew Gray is finally making his first ARLA Elite Series start. He failed to qualify for a few events last season, but he is here tonight and he is currently inside the top 15. Ricky Flush kicks off the third round of pit stops. On the fourth round, the relief drivers will hop into the cars. Eichholz follows him in. Howard, Eckerton, Matthews, Gray. Taylor Brillen pits on the second lap of the round, utilizing a more conservative strategy this time around. Allie Riggs, Laura Cyrus, Anthony Griffith, Tyson Lautenschlager, and Dale Underwood follow suit. Ashley Tucker will stay out again. Henrietta Laverne and Rachel Rainsford will also come in on this lap. As usual, Brillen will come out with the lead of the race. Allie Riggs has moved up to second after an unusually quiet run for her in the early part of the race. However, Ricky Flush is hounding her for that spot. Anthony Griffith is still running up inside the top 10. Here he is battling with Kyle Eckerton, Ashley Tucker, and Tiffany Matthews. Oh, Matthews runs turn 8 wide and gets into Griffith, taking both cars off and into the wall. Griffith had himself solidly inside the top 10 to make up some points, and Matthews was having a brilliant debut. Ricky Flush finally gets by Allie Riggs for the second spot. Flush has been outpaced by his rookie teammate CJ Cameron this season. However, Cameron failed to qualify for this race, and Flush is doing a great job as White Mountain Motorsports' lone representative tonight. Flush and Riggs would eventually catch up to Taylor Brillin, and Flush makes the move coming through Goliath. You see Anthony Griffith back there. He has just gone a lap down. And now Allie Riggs is peeking to the inside, trying to make it 3 wide, but she backs off. She's really shown some maturity during this season. Flush still has a nose ahead of the 65. Contact! Brillin goes off the course and into the wall from the lead. The 65 just gets loose and drifts up into the 31, but thankfully for Flush, he doesn't go with her. This is not the first time Taylor Brillin has taken herself out of the lead this season. She spun into the wall at Buffalo all by herself with a white flag in sight. What a tough break for the 65 team. I think some of the other drivers are going to want to take note of this. The top spot has not really been the place to be if you want to keep your car intact tonight. Ricky Flush is now the leader of the race. However, he gets caught in some traffic. This allows Allie Riggs to stay glued to his bumper, but Flush is doing a good job holding her off so far. Tyson Lautenschlager is running well inside the top 10 until Anthony Griffith washes up into the 70, taking both cars off the track and into the wall. Lapped cars once again cause problems for the leaders when they should be staying out of the way. Ricky Flush will kick off the 4th round of pit stops. This is when the drivers will hop out of the cars and rest while the relief drivers keep the cars on the road, and then they will get back in on the 7th cycle of pit stops. Flush will surrender the 31 car to Leon Keniston. Also coming in on this lap will be Kyle Eckerton, Andy Pearson, and Bigsby Foote. Foote is running 2 laps down, and in a few moments you will see Anthony Griffith running a lap down, Tyson Lautenschlager, Tiffany Matthews. Allie Riggs will come in on the next lap and hand the 19 car over to Chris Johans. Laura Cyrus is also in. She will hand the 50 to Bobby Porteau. Dale Underwood is in. Matthew Gray, Henrietta Laverne, Taylor Brillin, who is still running up inside the top 15 despite going into the wall. Rachel Rainsford is also heading into the pits. Nukulu Leko, Blaze Jonas. Henrietta Laverne and Matthew Gray pit together, but Laverne gets into the back of the 472 coming into the pits. And just like with Patrick Harrell earlier in the race, Laverne would be called to race control. When everything cycles out, Leon Keniston is running second to Chris Johans. However, Keniston will eventually have the benefit of older and therefore hotter tires, and he will get back up there to challenge for the lead. Oh no, the engine goes on the 31! I thought this team's reliability issues were over with. The Meridian Bolt was blowing up all over the place in 2010, and those problems seem to have resurfaced. And White Mountain Motorsports was on track for a great finish, but it just wasn't meant to be. This will leave Chris Johans with a huge lead, so the 19 car is now in a very good position for when Allie Riggs hops back in, but we still have a very long way to go until that happens. However, Chris Johans can really afford to take it easy and do his job, namely keeping the car on the road. Kendall Brillin, now driving the 65 in place of his daughter, is keeping that car in the top 15. The name Kendall Brillin should be a very familiar one to our more diehard ARLA fans. He won the 1996 Rockford 200, his only victory in the Elite Series. Thomas Tucker is now in the 66B for Ashley Tucker. That car is now running up inside the top 10, largely thanks to Ashley Tucker's pit strategy, and now Thomas Tucker just has to maintain that position during his stint. Patrick Eicholtz in for Jacob Eicholtz is now starting to chase down the 19. So far, this has been one of the best runs for the 231 team, aside from the rookie shootout victory, of course. Jessica Graham's stint in the 64 for Michael Madrigal would be short-lived, as the engine grenades on car 64. And this will cap off what has been a mediocre night for the 64 team. We are now halfway through the 150 laps of Dwyer, And here is your complete running order so far. Chris Johans is still on top with Patrick Eichholz continuing to try to chase him down. Bobby Porteau is still lurking around in third. The 03 car is having one of its better runs of the year. The Tuckers have worked their way up to the 6th position. Janet Inman in for Rene Ricarmier is still hanging around in 14th despite that car missing a cylinder. Stuart Sandoval is the last driver on the lead lap. The 018 car, Pete Maverick, is the first car one lap down. Jessica Graham went out of the race just a couple of laps ago, so we're still waiting for Liam D'Souza and Max Goose to pass him, and every car below 33rd is out of the race. Patrick Eichholz will kick off the next round of pit stops. Matt Pearson and Alan Foster will follow him in. And then on the next lap, our takers are Chris Johans, Bobby Porteau running first and second. Mitchell Hill will stay out for another lap. And when everything cycles out, Chris Johans maintains a big lead over everybody else. Mitchell Hill came out running in second, and he's not an unreasonably far distance behind Johans. A couple of years ago, Hill competed full-time alongside Dale Underwood for Ultra Fury Racing in the Elite Series, but he was demoted to the Thunder Trucks due to poor performances. However, Hill is doing a very good job with that 03 car tonight. Henrik Johansson in for Nikula Leko Blaze Jonas in the 274 car is doing a great job as well, keeping that car solidly inside the top 10. This team didn't qualify too well, but they've been staying out of trouble all night, and they're currently being rewarded for that. Thomas Tucker kept that car in the top 10 after pit stops cycled out, but unfortunately he had a tire start going down, and that started ripping apart the right front fender on that car, so he had to come back in and lose a lot of time getting that repaired. Patrick Eichholz, after pitting first, has warmer tires than his competitors, and he uses that to try to get by Mitchell Hill, though he runs off the road a little bit, and he loses all of his momentum for now. Patrick James Jr. goes 3 wide with Lawrence Burr and Stuart Sandoval. That results in Burr being turned around coming into the S's. He shoots across the track and into the wall. At the same time, Hamilton Porteau in for Cody Richards spins the 53 car out, probably in reaction to the 63 going around. However, Porteau keeps going. Patrick Eichholz finally gets around Mitchell Hill coming into turn number 13. Bobby Porteau is lurking back in the 4th position. Then he takes advantage of Mitchell Hill's lack of momentum coming off of 14 as Patrick Eichholz tries to drive away with the 2nd spot. But then Eichholz decides to kick off the next round of pit stops, waiting for any other leaders looking to follow suit. Here comes Matt Pearson in the 2, and Pearson will eventually be followed by Alan Foster. Here comes Foster in the number 17. Chris Johans pits on the next lap. Bobby Porteau will follow him in once again. Troy Griffith comes in. He is a lap down. Mitchell Hill will stay out for an extra lap. Chris Johans comes around, and you're going to see Mitchell Hill just coming out of the pit lane. So Chris Johans is still leading the race, but by a slightly smaller margin than Mitchell Hill since the last cycle of pit stops. The 472 team has worked their way up into the top 10, and Lewis Jones is doing a great job keeping it there for Matthew Gray, and they are still showing signs of moving forward as he is in a great position to challenge Alan Foster for 6th. Patrick Eichholz gets around Mitchell Hill once again for the 2nd spot. He continues to show that that team's strategy of pitting early is working. It's been a while since we saw Matt Pearson in an Elite Series car. He failed to impress after his father made his brief retirement from ARLA competition a few years ago. In fact, that is what prompted Andy Pearson to come back into ARLA. But Matt is doing a great job keeping that famous number 2 car in the top 5. No surprises here. Patrick Eichholz kicks off the 7th round of pit stops, so Patrick is going to hand the 231 back to Jacob Eichholz. Matt Pearson will follow suit on this lap. On the next lap, it will be Chris Johans and Bobby Porteau handing their cars back over to Allie Riggs and Laura Cyrus, respectively. Mitchell Hill stays out for an extra lap once again. When he comes in, Dale Underwood will hop back into the 03 car. Underwood comes out of the pits just barely ahead of Allie Riggs. Here she comes. She's got carrying a lot of speed through Goliath. Underwood still holds the lead coming off the corner, but Riggs gets onto his right side coming into the S's, and the right side is where you want to be through this set of corners. But Dale Underwood is holding his ground very well. Ooh, Allie Riggs runs the corner wide. She slips up, opening up the door for Dale Underwood once again. However, Riggs picks up a lot of momentum and holds off the 03. Matthew Gray is running in 6th after hopping back into the 472 car. JMJ Racing is continuing to move up through the field in their very first start. Scott Morales, right behind him, is a lap down. Cameron Sweetwater decides to play interference with the leaders, and as a result, Allie Riggs runs off the road coming through turn 8, opening up the door for Dale Underwood. Underwood has the preferred line coming through turn 9, and he will inch ahead of the 19. But Allie Riggs comes back and makes it 3 wide with Sweetwater and Underwood. She has the advantage coming into turn 13, and she will take the lead back. Allie Riggs will come around to put Ashley Tucker a lap down. Tucker had some brilliant pit strategy early on in the race that put her up inside the top 10, but then the team had that tire issue, and they've been off the pace ever since. What a tough break for the 66B car. Marcus Leonard has the Division by Zero car break down on him coming through the S's. Henry Santos in the X2 has nowhere to go and runs into the back of Leonard, spinning him off into the grass. Leonard would require a tow to the pits, but he will return to the race. Jacob Eichholz kicks off the next round of pit stops. He has some right side damage to that car after contact with another driver, and he will lose some time repairing that. Allie Riggs comes in on the next lap. Dale Underwood stays out. Laura Cyrus follows her teammate into the pits. Riding on board with Allie Riggs, Dale Underwood comes out of the pits ahead of her, and Riggs will retake the lead. However, Riggs has to contend with the lapped car of Dan McKay through the S's. Ooh, she runs the corner wide, washes up track, and contact between the 10 and the 19. McKay gets run off the road, and that kills Allie Riggs' momentum, even though she maintained control of her car. That allows Underwood to close the gap a little bit. Jacob Eichholz falls back to 7th after getting that right side damage repaired. However, he still has a very fast car as he is in position to battle Rachel Rainsford. Matthew Gray has inherited the 5th position as a result of Eichholz's misfortune. Here he is trying to get around Laverne. Oh, contact between Laverne and Gray, and they both go off the track and into the wall, and that will result in terminal damage to both cars. Matthew Gray was having a fantastic run in his first start, and now it all goes sour. A couple of laps later, Tyson Lautenschlager interferes with the battle between Brenda Riggs and Renee Ricarmier. Riggs makes it 3 wide coming through the S's. Lautenschlager drifts up the track. Riggs goes off the track and into the wall. So with 2 incidents in the span of a few laps, it seems that the attrition we've been having in the S's is starting to resurface. Back at the business end of the field, the leaders encounter the lapped cars of Bigsby Foot and Kevin Monroe. They block the track, and that allows Dale Underwood to close up the gap on Allie Riggs. Riggs is trying to hold him off. Bigsby Foot starts to step out. Oh, contact between the 14 and the 19. And Dale Underwood will take the lead as Bigsby Foot and Allie Riggs now get into a shoving match. Let's go on board the 19 car. You are going to see Bigsby Foot get a little bit out of shape. And it looks like Allie Riggs goes for the hole, but Foot gets up into the 19, and that runs her off the road. And it seems that Riggs didn't take too kindly to that, unsurprisingly enough. But that kills her momentum and allows Dale Underwood to drive away. Dale Underwood and Ultra Fury Racing have not had too much success in 2011. When Underwood hasn't crashed, his results have been rather mediocre for the most part. But so far, he has been turning his performance around. But he still has to worry about Allie Riggs, who is on warmer tires than him, and therefore she is faster. But Underwood is doing a pretty good job of holding her off for the time being, at least until Riggs gets a great run on him coming into turn number 11. Riggs is going to have the preferred line coming into 12 and 13, so she will retake the lead from the 03. A few laps later, Riggs surrenders the lead to pull off for what will be her final pit stop of the night. Once again, Dale Underwood stays out for an extra lap, and because of the time he gained, he now has a big lead over Riggs when pit stops cycle out. But Underwood is at a disadvantage because Allie Riggs, on her warmer tires, has been slowly chipping away at his lead in this final leg of the race. And a couple of laps later, she really closes the gap as Underwood gets stuck behind the lapped car of Bixby Foot. Underwood looks to the left, but Riggs sticks to the right, the preferred line through the S's. And Allie Riggs retakes the lead with about 10 laps remaining. But on this track, 10 laps is 48 miles, so we've still got quite a ways to go. Underwood looks to the right, coming into turns 7 and 8. He runs the right side into the grass a little bit. It looks like Riggs might have pinched him over, but there was no contact, and Riggs will keep the lead and even start driving away from the 03 a little bit, coming off of 8. Then Riggs starts facing some heavy traffic once again in the form of Marcus Leonard and Amy Harrison. Dale Underwood is all too happy to take advantage of this. He clears Riggs and is now working on Leonard, but then Riggs dives to the inside coming into turn number 11. And she gets a big run through the corner as Underwood is a sitting duck. But Underwood does get a little bit of momentum through 12, and he tries to hold her off. Oh, he almost shuts the door, but that would have gotten himself wrecked. Underwood has no choice but to surrender the lead to Riggs once again in what has arguably been her best spot on the track to make passes. And then Underwood gets held up a little bit by Kevin Monroe, allowing Riggs to open up the gap on him a little bit. But coming to 2 laps to go, the leaders encounter more lap traffic. D'Souza moves over for Riggs but makes contact with Henry Santos, almost wiping each other out and possibly taking the leaders with them. Anyway, Underwood has closed the gap on Riggs once again, coming off of Goliath. Underwood is running out of time to make a move, so he has to do it now. He follows Riggs through the S's while contending with the lap cars. Riggs pulls on him just a little bit. Henry Santos drifts up and in between Underwood and Riggs. But a few moments later, Gary D'Souza pinches Riggs over just a little bit. But Riggs still hangs on to her momentum and powers by the lap cars, leaving Dale Underwood trapped behind them. And with a clear racetrack ahead of the leaders, Dale Underwood does not quite have enough for Allie Riggs. On the final lap, Underwood is still about 5 car lengths behind Riggs coming into turn number 13. And, oh no! The engine goes on the 03 while he's running in second on the last lap. 5.5 hours of racing, and Underwood's engine gives up 20 seconds from the finish after one of his best runs of the year by far. But in the meantime, with no competition left, Allie Riggs will come down to win the 150 laps of Dwyer, her 3rd victory of the season and first career win on a road course. Laura Cyrus finishes 2nd, matching her best finish of the year. She finished 2nd in a race in the season opener. She has been running very strong this season, and now that she's in the 50 car for the rest of the year, I believe it's only a matter of time before she visits victory lane. Andy Pearson, driving the only Pearson-Sweeney car in the field, comes home in 3rd. Jacob Eichholz rallies back to finish 4th after that slow pit stop, and Rachel Rainsford finishes 5th, one of her better runs of the year after driving a clean race all night. Joseph Howard brings home a 6th place finish in a bittersweet night for MRD Motorsports. Nikululeko Blaze Jonas, first start, first top 10 for the South African. Tiffany Matthews also finishes in the top 10 in her debut. She didn't qualify too well, but she made up a lot of ground by avoiding all of the trouble tonight. Kyle Eckerton finishes 9th after a quiet run in the Zenith, and Harry Enola finishes 10th, which puts all 3 Riggs Motorsports cars that qualified for this race in the top 10. And now let's take a look at the point standings, leaving the 150 laps of Dwyer. Kevin Monroe is still the leader, but Allie Riggs and Renee Recarmier are tied for 2nd, chipping away at that lead. Jacob Eichholz is 4th, 101 points behind the leader, and then a whopping 66 points behind 4th place is Joseph Howard. CJ Cameron and Brenda Riggs are tied for 6th, 173 points behind the leader. Cameron, by the way, is the only driver currently in the top 10 to have failed to qualify for this race tonight. Gary D'Souza is 8th, Ricky Flush is 9th, and Andy Pearson rounds out the top 10. And now for 11 through 20, Bixby Foot is 195 points behind the leader. Michael Madrigal in 12th, Blake Ruel 13th, Taylor Brillen and Harry Enola move up to 14th and 15th respectively. Nick Howard is the next driver in the point standings to have failed to qualify for Dwyer. Rip Tyler also failed to qualify. Leslie Riggs is out for the rest of the season, but she is still 18th. We wish Leslie Riggs a smooth recovery. Amy Harrison is 19th after a poor run tonight. And Holden Roberts, despite failing to qualify, still hangs on to a spot in the top 20.